Welcome. Today, we're going to tackle a scenario that, honestly, every single AWS solutions architect needs to master. We'll be looking at two really powerful AWS services built to handle those tricky, specialized workloads and make sure they can withstand just about anything.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with the classic real-world challenge. You've got a critical Windows file server. It's probably using SMB protocols and TFS permissions, the whole shebang. And the business absolutely cannot afford for it to go down. And look, this isn't just some simple server migration, right? This is a high-stakes puzzle.
So this whole scenario, it really breaks down into two separate problems that you, as the architect, have got to solve. First, how in the world do you move this specialized Windows workload to the cloud without breaking anything? And second, how do you build a system that guarantees it stays online, even when things inevitably go wrong?
I mean, this slide just frames the value of the cloud perfectly. On-premises, you're juggling everything. You're the hardware person, the patch manager, you're the firefighter when a disk dies. With a managed AWS solution, you just offload all of that. Your big capital expense becomes a predictable operating expense, and that administrative overhead, it shrinks dramatically, letting you focus on what really matters, the architecture.
All right, so let's tackle that first challenge, the specialized migration part. For that, we're going to look at our first tool, Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. The best way to think of it is like the perfect, custom-built shelf in the cloud, made just for your Windows data.
And the real beauty here, the magic of FSx for Windows, is that it's not some kind of imitation or a clunky workaround. No, this is a fully managed, native Microsoft Windows file system. What that means is your applications don't even have to know they've moved to the cloud. They see the exact same file shares they've always seen. It just works.
This slide right here, it's basically a checklist of everything that makes a Windows file server, a Windows file server. You get full SMB support, native Active Directory integration, and the exact same NTFS permissions you're used to. On top of all that, it's all built on super fast SSD storage with multi-AZ deployments for high availability.
So what's the bottom line here? The crucial point is that AWS handles all the messy stuff. The hardware provisioning, the software patching, the backups. You get all the good parts of a Windows file server with none of the headaches. That's a massive win for any IT team, for sure.
Okay, so FSx totally nails the storage problem. It's perfect. But what about that near-zero downtime requirement we talked about? For that, we need a recovery engine. We need a backup power generator. And that's where our second tool comes in, AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery.
So AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery, we'll just call it DRS, is basically your insurance policy against, well, anything going wrong. Its entire reason for being is to give you fast, reliable recovery for your applications, minimizing both downtime and data loss, whether those apps are on-prem or already in AWS.
But before we get any deeper, we've got to lock down two terms that are absolutely 100% essential for the Solutions Architect exam. First up is RPO, or Recovery Point Objective. This is all about data. The question it answers is simple. How much data are you okay with losing? An RPO of seconds means you can only afford to lose a few seconds worth of data. And here's the other side of that coin, RTO, or Recovery Time Objective. If RPO is about data, RTO is all about time. It answers the question, how fast do you need to be back up and running? An RTO of minutes means that entire system has to be back online and working in just that tiny window.
And this is why DRS is such a game changer. Look at these targets. We're talking about an RPO of seconds and an RTO measured in minutes. For those critical applications like our file server, these aren't just nice-to-haves. No way. These are absolute business-critical requirements.
Okay, so now let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. We've got our specialized storage with FSx, we've got our super fast recovery engine with DRS. How do they actually work together to build something that's truly resilient?
The process is actually pretty slick and straightforward. First, you've got this little agent on your server that's just constantly streaming data to a low-cost staging area in AWS. Then you can run drills, totally non-disruptive tests to make sure you're ready. And if the worst happens, you hit the failover button, and boom, DRS launches fully provisioned recovery instances in just a few minutes. And getting back is just as easy.
So here's a really great way to picture this. Your FSx file server, that's the main engine, right? It's running the business. DRS is the pilot light. It's always on, always ready, quietly replicating data in the background, just waiting to fire up the backup engines on AWS at a moment's notice. This whole pilot light strategy is a huge concept for the exam, so you'll want to remember that one.
Okay, let's tie all of this directly back to the exam. For anyone studying for the SAA-C03, understanding when to use these services versus other ones, that's where you're going to score points. Seriously, this table is your cheat sheet. For the exam, you have got to know these differences. If a question mentions a Windows file server or SMB, your brain should immediately go to FSX for Windows. If you see Linux and NFS, you're thinking EFS. And when they talk about super strict RPO and RTO, seconds and minutes, that's a dead giveaway for DRS. For everything else, the less urgent backups, AWS Backup is going to be your more cost-effective play.
So let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. It's pretty simple, right? FSX is for the what? The specific kind of workload you have. In this case, a native Windows file system. DFS is for the when, for when things go wrong and you need to get back online fast. Just remember, these tools are at the heart of designing resilient and high-performing architectures, two massive domains on the exam. And don't forget about the cost angle. That DFS pilot light model is designed to be super affordable when everything is running smoothly.
So there you have it. We've seen how you can combine this specialized storage with lightning-fast recovery. But really, this is just scratching the surface. True resilience in this day and age isn't just about bouncing back from a problem. It's about building systems that can anticipate threats, absorb them, and adapt. So as you go off and design your next architecture, always be thinking, what's next? Thanks for joining me on this one.